When you play the Game of Thrones, you
Subscribe and like.
or you die. There is no middle ground.
Alright, hello guys, welcome back to the Grease Comedy YouTube channel. Today's video, we are going to be starting up a series that's going to be going on this channel for a very long time, and hopefully you guys enjoy it. But I was kind of inspired by Alt-Shift-X's videos that he kind of has been doing with Tyrion and Jon, where it's like, who are these characters? And so that kind of inspired me to do a listing. I want to do the top 100 characters of A Song of Ice and Fire, talking about what makes them so enjoyable or unique to the story, why I find them to be one of the best characters in A Song of Ice and Fire, and all of that. And so before we get into this first video, this first part here with Ygritte, as you guys may have noticed by the title and also the thumbnail, I want to set some criteria here, because it's very difficult to do this list. I'm not doing this list as if it's just Song of Ice and Fire. I'm doing it as in the histories, so looking at Fire and Blood, looking at Dunk and Egg, looking at all the stories, and specifically of the Targaryen era of Westeros, and trying to put together the top 100 characters. And what do I mean by that? So I mean the characters that are the most impactful, which characters are the most interesting to study, how are they written, do they have an interesting character arc, what is their personality like. This is very easy, and the best way to sum this up is how enjoyable is it to talk about the character? Like, how much is there to talk about? If I was going to make like a character analysis, would I be really interested in doing it, or is that character not as interesting, right? So there's a couple things that kind of put this all together, right? So for instance, a character that you might not like, so like the Mad King, is not going to be like one of your 100 favorite characters, but when doing my list, I want him to be on here because he is one of the best written characters in Song of Ice and Fire. He's really well written, and he's huge and impactful for the Targaryens and the story as a whole. And so I will say he is on this list at some point, but I just want to make that clear. This is not my 100 favorites, but my favorite characters, they will be involved in this ranking. So again, if you see villains on here, it's not because I like those characters, it's because I like the way they're written, I like the impact they have on the story, and all of the things that they represent of study. I enjoy all of those. So let's get into Ygritte. Now, Ygritte to me is a character on this list. She is, again, on the very bottom. She is someone that is heavily helped by the idea that we get a lot of her personality. We understand who she is as a character quite a lot. And that's something that all of the characters from the main story have a leg up on from characters in the histories of the world, right? So characters like Aegon and Visenya, Rhaenys. We know a lot about Ygritte because we're there with her with Jon. We know a lot about this character. We don't have to kind of pick and choose what actually happened with this character, like looking at their actions, right? Like, we don't know everything about Visenya and her personal life because it's written through other sources. And so that helps Ygritte quite a lot. And so Ygritte is on this list in a lot of ways because the way she impacts Jon's character, the way she is a very fun and interesting character that presents the audience with a new way of thinking, or even Jon in the story with a new way of thinking. She represents what the wildlings or the free folk really encompass and what they are trying to do. It presents us, the audience, with a person that we really like that is a wildling, something we are not really shown, again, as we're given a biased viewpoint of the Westerosi. That is not to say that all wildlings are good and all wildlings are bad. They're just normal people. They have their good eggs, they have their bad eggs. And so let's get into Ygritte, and let's start this off with a quote about her. This comes from Jon Snow's thoughts. How could he explain Ygritte to them? She's warm and smart and funny, and she can kiss a man or slit his throat. Again, perfectly encapsulating Ygritte. She is someone that, you know, she really loves the people close to her, but she is also somebody that will stick up for her, and she's also a fighter. On the wiki of Ice and Fire, she's described as having a round face, crooked white teeth, small hands, and a pug nose. She has pretty blue-gray eyes. Her legs are skinny but well-muscled. Again, she is a character that is not the prettiest, right? She's not like an Ashara Dane or like a Shiera Seastar type of character, but she has her own beauty. And she's very unique because of her curly, bright red hair, which is, again, for the wildling culture, said to be lucky and to be kissed by fire. She is around 18 or 19 years old when she dies in 299 AC, but she was born in 280 AC. And so this character is right away introduced as being a love interest for Jon, which is quite interesting. It gives you like that Romeo Juliet type look at the character because she's a wildling. It's the opposite of what the Night's Watch preaches, right? The Night's Watch is very strict and layered in the way that they do business, right? You can't have a wife, you can't have children, you're not really supposed to be women, even though it's kind of blurry on that line. You're not really free, right? You have to be at the wall. The free folk offer a very different opinion that Ygritte really shows to Jon. How the wildlings, or the free folk, are free, right? They don't believe that any land is theirs. They don't exactly bend to any lord or bend their knee to any king. Although Mance does become king, and from time to time you do see a king, it's because they choose him or that person as their king, because he is either the best of them, or the person bringing them all together, or the person they just all respect and like. Whereas that's not the case at all in Westeros, right? We know Westeros, it basically, again, is hereditary, right? The eldest male comes after the king or the lord, and usually that's a son, but if not, it can be an uncle or whatnot. That's different in Dorne, and, you know, whatever. But it shows a different way of showing how this world works, right? Women have more rights in this land when it comes to, again, women are allowed to fight. Ygritte is basically a spear wife. She's allowed to use a bow, things like that. She's allowed to fight. She's someone that also has a bit more rights as well. And so you think about all these things, and it's just a very different way of life for Jon, who's grew up in a castle. He has been shown, you know, how the world should be in his own mind. And that's why that whole line comes about that you know nothing, Jon Snow, because Jon, again, at this point of the story, really knows what he has been taught by Ned. It's something that he struggles with quite a lot. And so when he gets this different perspective that Ygritte is showing him, Ygritte is our character of just showing Jon that there is a better life out there than the Night's Watch, right? In North of the Wall, for instance, bastards are not treated badly. That's Jon's whole thing, is that Jon grew up with a lot of trauma because of the way he was treated and the way he felt because he was just a bastard. It's so bad that he doesn't want to reproduce because he doesn't want that child to have to live with what he did. That's one of the reasons that he doesn't end up wanting to sleep with Ygritte at the beginning, and eventually he breaks down because of a talk with Tormund, but all that's interesting. So let's kind of go back chronologically into the story and figure out where Ygritte comes into the story. At a Clash of Kings, Ygritte is part of the Rattleshirt's band of free folk in the Skirling Pass. And again, if that brings up any bells, at this point, Qhorin Halfhand is leading a scouting party with Jon. They're trying to basically either assassinate Mance Rayder or just figure out more of what's going on. And that doesn't end up going well. But to begin with, we see that Jon Snow and Stone Snake end up ambushing Ygritte's party. And Orell is killed and another man are slain. And Ygritte is, again, caught off guard. So she's in this point of where she could have died and all these things. And that, I think, leads us to a really awesome quote that we get in the book from Ygritte about freedom. Ygritte says to Jon, "It's dangerous being free, but most come to like the taste of it," right? And I think that's a really important line to understand with Ygritte is when you think about the wildlings and the free folk, freedom is actually almost true freedom for the free folk. And when you think about how structured and how awful the system is for the common folk of Westeros, that's really what the whole story is about. This line really rings true. But we see that Jon is basically given a task where Qhorin says to kill her. And we know that this was really just a test to see what Jon would do. But Jon Snow comes to this point where he remembers Ned. And so if you're Ygritte here, I think at this point, she is someone that, one, I don't think she believed Jon was going to kill her because of his youth and all these things. And so Ygritte starts working on Jon, right? Saying that he could, desert. He could become one of them and live free. And what Jon, I think, realizes in Ygritte is not an evil person. She is someone that's innocent, right? And that's why he lets her go. And so Ygritte, at this point on in the story, has, a crush on him, and I think she also appreciates Jon not killing her also as well. But she, at this point, this is something she's going to battle with for the rest of the story that she's alive in, is she realizes that Jon likes their way of life, but at the same time, I don't think she's dumb. She knows that Jon is still a crow at heart, who he is. He's an honorable man. And so her whole journey in A Storm of Swords is really about trying to convince him that this is the way, that he shouldn't go back to the Watch. He should live with the wildlings. Now, something else I forgot to notice, is that she also has a brother, for Longspear Reich. We actually don't know where Ygritte is from. All we're told it is the same village as her brother. We don't really know where she is actually from. That she's from north of the Wall. Also, something else to notice, or to note, again, we don't have a ton on Ygritte's background. The two things we do know is that she actually had a lover at some point, but he wasn't a very good one, and so her brother actually broke his arm and chased him off. We also know that during this time of A Clash of Kings, she actually tells a story that she had heard from her mother about Bale the Bard. Now, this is a fascinating tale because it really relates to Jon Snow quite a lot. Now, the purpose of this tale is really to say, what's the difference between the wildlings and the Starks, right? Because Bale the Bard, it is said in this tale, again, it doesn't really seem to be truthful. I mean, there's some parts of it, elements that could be true, but given the story that she tells, there's a lot of facts that don't really add up, but who knows? And so the point of it is to say, again, the Lord of Winterfell at the time was actually a son of Bale the Bard, and so that child actually has wildling blood. So the Starks have wildling blood. That's basically what she's trying to tell him. Again, to show that there's not that much that's different between the two, except of where they live and their cultures are a bit different. But also the story is, in a lot of ways, could be a foreshadow to Jon's parentage. It is specifically about someone taking a Stark daughter away and having a child. We also get the flower that is, again, Lyanna's signature, being the flower that is used in the story, again, to kind of connect that idea that it could be Rhaegar and Lyanna. Is what this kind of story kind of feels like. And so a lot of that story is just told there to show, again, Jon, we're not that different. She's trying to make him feel integrated into this culture. But at this, we see how the events play out, and Jon becoming integrated into the wildlings to try and spy on them and infiltrate what they're going to do. But Ygritte at this time basically just starts trying to seduce him at this time. As Jon is instructed to go with Tormund's company, we see Ygritte also follow him and continuously trying to sleep next to him and make advances. For a while, Jon fights this off, but when in a conversation with Tormund tells him that basically he's already stolen her, killing her companions and taking her, more or less, or sparing her life. And so eventually the two do start sleeping together, and part of this is because Ygritte says that they have been to Mance, because this whole situation goes on. But again, we'll talk about that in next week, because we're doing a video on Mance next week. But I think in this video, the point of this to show is that Ygritte understands that Jon is still not a wildling. He is someone that's still part of the Watch. He's not there yet. And so she's trying to protect him because she, A, has a crush on him, but she also sees a possibility of being able to change him. It's quite interesting. If you think about real life, if you ever have been in a relationship with someone that you thought maybe you could change to be for the better or whatever, that's kind of what Ygritte's trying to do here. And more or less, Ygritte ends up saving Jon, because Jon didn't tell Mance about the forces at the Fist of the First Men. But at this, Ygritte then seduces him this night. Again, Ygritte really likes Jon. That's the point of the story here, and this is really that turning point where Jon is feeling very conflicted, because Jon knows he is going to have to leave her at some point. And Ygritte, I think, and even in her mind, knows that could happen, but she's trying to forestall that. She's trying to make him love her more than he loves duty, honor, and his things that he must do with the Night's Watch. That's what she's trying to do. She's trying to win the battle of, again, the heart at conflict. But something we also see when they actually do get to the Wall, as their affairs continue, and we get really one of the best parts of Jon and Ygritte's relationship when they're in the cave. And I think this really is an important moment, right? Because when we get to, Ygritte's death, when you think about the idea there is like, Ygritte really didn't want this war, right? If she could have been able to stay with Jon in that cave, she would have. And it kind of shows her motivations, right? She just wanted to live happy. She wanted to have some land. She didn't want to kill all the Night's Watchmen like some of the other wildlings do. She wanted security. She wanted peace, to live a happy life. And that's just not the case for so many people in this world. But she reveals to Jon that Mance had never found the Horn of Jormungand, which is very interesting given, you know, what's all being threatened at this point and what's going on, because Jon at this point was under the illusion that he probably did find this horn and it was a major threat to the wall. But at this, they end up going further into the gift and further into the north. We even see a really awesome line where Ygritte thinks that these round towers are castles, something that's very similar in the show. And it's interesting because you think about Ygritte, she's someone that has lived north of the wall. They don't have a lot of stonework. They don't have, you know, that sophisticated of things north of the wall. They're very simplistic when you really think about it. They're barbaric in a lot of ways. And so when you see this, you're going, wow, this is crazy, right? Just normal stonework. And to think about what Ygritte would have reacted to when seeing something like a Winterfell, like a King's Landing, it really paints that picture, right? You know, I just find that a very interesting line there for Ygritte that George uses to humanize the character and just show those differences between Ygritte and also Jon. But at this, we finally get to the point where everything kind of blows up for Ygritte, right? Ygritte is a character in which she's been holding on to Jon, trying to twist him for so long, but they finally make it to south of the wall at Queen's Crown, where they find a lone old man. And this is where it breaks. Jon cannot bring himself to kill this old man. And just like with Ygritte, her being spared, this is what breaks it, right? In the confusion and attack by Summer, Jon escapes. Although Ygritte does shoot him, again, it doesn't seem as though she was trying to kill him. It was more just she was angry at him because at this point, Ygritte knows Jon has ruined it, right? If this old man, if Jon would have just simply killed this old man, maybe Ygritte would have allowed for more time to be able to change Jon. And it's that thing that Ygritte was attached so much to Jon, of his mercy and maybe his intelligence and things. It's that thing that saved her is also going to be the thing that kills her. A great moment for us, the audience, because it really parallels well with her first meeting with Jon and one of her last meetings with Jon. But after this, it's history. They have the attack on Castle Black with Sturder's band, but Jon had forewarned the Night's Watch, and during the attack, Ygritte is seen by Jon, but Jon cannot bring himself to kill her. But it doesn't matter. After the battle, Jon finds her. In her final moments, she says, "Do you remember that cave? We should have stayed in that cave. I told you so. We'll go back to the cave. You're not going to die, Ygritte. You're not. Oh, you know nothing, Jon Snow." It's a really awesome line because, again, it paints back to Ygritte and Jon's relationship. It's just what it could have been, what Ygritte really wanted, and how war has once again taken another person's life, and all they really wanted was what we talked about earlier: peace, happiness, a lot of things that Dany wants, a home. But it all ends up blowing up in her face. It's a really rough moment for Jon as his first love is gone. We see Ygritte's body being burned after the battle. And that's the end of Ygritte. But what is Ygritte? So what's her importance? What is she? Why is she relevant to have on this list? And again, she did barely make it, but I think her big importance is showing us, the readers, the lifestyle of the wildlings, giving us some sympathy towards them and humanizing them. She's important for Jon as she tests his morals, his vows, and makes him think about life completely different. The 5th book of the series is almost completely driven by Jon's relationship with Ygritte. The way he tries to integrate the wildlings into Westerosi culture, trying to get them south of the wall. All of that is driven because of his relationship with Ygritte. If that had not happened, who knows how Jon would be viewing the wildlings in book 5. And so that's the importance of her character and why I feel like she should have been on this top 100. But I'd love to hear what you guys think. And as we're going further into this series, which I hope to do maybe once a week or once every 2 weeks, let me know what characters you want to see. Again, there is characters that maybe I could have forgotten, and maybe I'll add them to the list as we go through. But yeah, Ygritte as number 100 and a great place to start. And I'll see you guys all in next week's video with 99 being Mance. So again, we're going to be sticking to the wildlings and the north.